In the distant reaches of the galaxy, where stars shimmered like scattered diamonds and planets danced in their celestial ballet, there existed a world unlike any other. It was called Zentrix, a planet ruled by alien barons who prided themselves on their superiority over all species. The barons were tall, elegant beings with skin that glowed faintly under sunlight, shifting hues between emerald green and deep violet depending on their mood. They believed themselves to be the pinnacle of creation, destined to govern not just their own kind but every sentient being unfortunate enough to cross their path. Zentrix was home to another group of inhabitants, the Pletheians. These creatures were shorter, more delicate, and far less imposing than the barons. Their translucent wings shimmered with iridescent colors, making them look almost ethereal. Among these Pletheians lived Ayra, a young woman whose heart brimmed with curiosity and defiance. She had always been different from her peers, not because she was smarter or stronger, but because she dared to dream beyond the confines of her oppressive society. While others whispered about rebellion behind closed doors, Ayra openly questioned why they should bow to the barons' tyranny. The barons did not tolerate such behavior lightly. For centuries, they enforced strict laws forbidding interaction between Pletheians and humans, a race they deemed inferior due to their fragile bodies and unpredictable emotions. Yet, despite this prohibition, stories of forbidden love had begun to circulate among the Pletheian communities. Some claimed it was impossible for two vastly different species to form meaningful bonds. Others argued that true connection transcended biology. Either way, the mere idea sent shivers down the spines of the ruling class. Ayra's life changed forever when she encountered Thorne, a human trader who had crash-landed near her village during one of his interstellar voyages. Unlike many humans, Thorne wasn't loud or arrogant. Instead, he carried an air of quiet resilience, his face lined with scars earned from years of navigating treacherous space routes. When their eyes met for the first time, something unspoken passed between them, a spark neither could ignore. At first, Ayra kept her distance, wary of attracting unwanted attention. But as days turned into weeks, she found herself drawn to Thorne's kindness and unwavering determination to survive against all odds. Their friendship blossomed slowly, nurtured by stolen moments beneath the twin moons of Zentrix. They shared stories of their respective worlds, laughed at cultural misunderstandings, and marveled at how much they had in common despite their differences. To Ayra, Thorne represented freedom, a concept foreign yet intoxicating. And to Thorne, Ayra embodied hope, reminding him of everything worth fighting for. But happiness is fleeting when shadowed by fear. One fateful evening, as Ayra and Thorne sat by the edge of a glowing crystal lake, they were ambushed by a patrol of Baron enforcers. The leader, Baron Calith, sneered at the sight before him. His luminescent skin pulsed angrily, shifting to a fiery red. "How dare you defile our sacred laws?" he spat, his voice dripping with disdain. Before either Ayra or Thorne could react, the enforcers seized them, dragging them back to the capital city. Word spread quickly across Zentrix about the scandalous affair. The barons saw this as an opportunity to make an example of Ayra, hoping to crush any notions of rebellion among the Pletheians once and for all. In a grotesque display of power, they sentenced her to public humiliation, binding her wrists and hoisting her onto a towering pole erected in the center of the city square. Her wings drooped lifelessly, their vibrant colors dulled by despair. Crowds gathered around, some cheering, others silent with sorrow, as the barons proclaimed her punishment, death by exposure unless someone intervened. Standing among the spectators, unnoticed by most, was a human named Corbin. He wasn't extraordinary by any means, average height, scruffy beard, and a perpetually mischievous glint in his hazel eyes. Corbin had arrived on Zentrix months earlier, seeking refuge after his ship broke down. Unlike Thorne, he wasn't burdened by noble intentions or grand ideals. Instead, he thrived on chaos, finding joy in small acts of rebellion against authority. When he heard about Ayra's plight, however, something stirred within him, a flicker of outrage mixed with admiration for her courage. As night fell over the city, casting long shadows across the square, Corbin formulated a plan. He knew better than to confront the barons directly. Brute force wouldn't work against their advanced weaponry. No, subtlety was key. Slipping through alleys and avoiding patrols, he scavenged tools and materials from nearby workshops, piecing together a makeshift device designed to cut through Ayra's restraints. Along the way, he encountered unexpected allies, a pair of Pletheian siblings eager to help, a disgruntled baron guard willing to turn a blind eye, and even a rogue AI drone program to assist those in need. By dawn, everything was ready. As the sun peaked over the horizon, bathing the square in golden light, Corbin put his plan into motion. Disguised as a street performer, he entertained the growing crowd with sleight-of-hand tricks and witty banter, drawing attention away from the pole where Ayra hung. Meanwhile, the Plethian siblings created a diversion by releasing a swarm of bioluminescent insects, causing panic among the guards. Seizing the moment, Corbin activated his device, sending a precise laser beam slicing through Ayra's bonds. For a brief second, time seemed to freeze. Ayra plummeted toward the ground, only to be caught mid-air by the rogue AI drone, which gently lowered her to safety. Gasps erupted from the crowd as she landed, dazed but alive. Corbin wasted no time, grabbing her hand and pulling her into the nearest alleyway. Together, they sprinted through winding streets, dodging patrols and narrowly avoiding capture. Behind them, alarms blared, signaling the start of a city-wide manhunt. Despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins, Ayra couldn't help but laugh, at the absurdity of it all, at the sheer audacity of this strange human who had risked everything to save her. "Who are you?" she asked breathlessly as they ducked into a hidden alcove. Corbin grinned, his teeth flashing white against his scruffy beard. "Just a guy trying to stay out of trouble," he replied with a wink. "Though I guess today proves I'm not very good at that." Their escape wasn't without its challenges. At one point, they found themselves cornered in a marketplace, surrounded by Baron enforcers armed with plasma rifles. Thinking quickly, Corbin grabbed a nearby fruit vendor's cart and hurled it at the guards, scattering them momentarily. As they made a break for it, Ayra couldn't resist teasing him. "You know, for someone so reckless, you're surprisingly clever." "And for someone so graceful," Corbin shot back, gesturing to her flailing wings as she tripped over a loose cobblestone, "you're surprisingly clumsy." Their banter provided a much-needed reprieve from the tension, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, laughter could still exist. But the danger was far from over. Eventually, they reached the outskirts of the city, where Corbin's allies awaited them. The Plethian siblings led them to a hidden cave system, while the rogue AI drone provided real-time updates on Baron movements. Inside the caves, they regrouped, tending to minor injuries and planning their next move. It was then that Ayra realized the full extent of what Corbin had done, not just for her, but for everyone watching. By defying the Baron so boldly, he had ignited a spark of rebellion in the hearts of countless Plethians. News of her rescue spread like wildfire, inspiring whispers of dissent and dreams of freedom. Even the disgruntled Baron guard who had helped them confessed that he'd never seen such unity among the oppressed before. Yet, as the hours ticked by, reality began to sink in. The Barons would stop at nothing to recapture Ayra and punish those involved in her escape. Worse still, Thorne remained missing, his fate unknown. Ayra felt torn between gratitude for her newfound allies and guilt for leaving him behind. Corbin noticed the conflict in her eyes and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll find him," he promised. "But first, we need to figure out how to take down the Barons for good." Little did they know, their journey was only beginning. Ahead lay untold dangers, unexpected alliances, and revelations that would challenge everything they thought they knew about Zentrix, and themselves. As the group huddled in the dimly lit cave, their makeshift sanctuary felt both safe and suffocating. The air was thick with anticipation, uncertainty hanging over them like a storm cloud ready to burst. Ayra sat cross-legged on the cold stone floor, her wings folded tightly against her back, a physical manifestation of her inner turmoil. Corbin paced back and forth, his mind racing through possibilities as he chewed absent-mindedly on a piece of dried fruit scavenged from the market earlier. "We can't stay here forever," one of the Plethian siblings, Liren, whispered nervously. Her translucent wings fluttered erratically, betraying her anxiety. "The Barons will search every corner of this planet until they find us." Corbin stopped pacing and turned to face her, his scruffy features softening into a reassuring smile. "Relax, kid. We've got time." He glanced at the rogue AI drone hovering nearby, its glowing blue eye scanning the surroundings for any sign of danger. "Besides, we've got eyes in the sky." "But what's the plan?" Ayra interjected, her voice steady despite the weight of everything pressing down on her. "We can't just run forever. Sooner or later, we'll have to fight back." For a moment, silence settled over the group. It wasn't that no one had thought about fighting back, it was that no one had dared to say it aloud. Challenging the barons wasn't just risky, it was unthinkable. They were powerful, ruthless, and seemingly untouchable. Yet, as Ayra spoke those words, something shifted. The idea took root, growing stronger with each passing second. "Okay," Corbin said finally, breaking the silence. "Let's think this through. What do the barons fear most?" "Nothing," muttered Kale, Liren's brother, bitterly. "They're gods compared to us." "Not true," Ayra countered firmly. "They fear losing control. That's why they punish anyone who steps out of line so brutally, to keep everyone afraid. If we could show people there's a way to resist, maybe we could turn their own fear against them." Corbin snapped his fingers. Now that is thinking outside the box. But how do we pull it off without getting ourselves killed? The rogue AI drone chimed in then, its mechanical voice calm yet urgent. "Data suggests the barons rely heavily on centralized systems for communication and resource distribution. Disrupting these networks could destabilize their authority temporarily." Everyone stared at the drone, astonished by its insight. For a machine programmed to assist traders and travelers, it certainly had some impressive strategic capabilities. "So, sabotage?" Liren asked hesitantly. "Exactly," Corbin replied, grinning. "But not just any sabotage. We hit them where it hurts most, their pride. Publicly humiliate them while crippling their infrastructure. Make them look weak in front of their own people." Ayra nodded slowly, a spark of determination reigniting in her eyes. "It's risky, but it might work. Where do we start?" Their first target was the Grand Nexus, a towering structure in the heart of the capital city that served as the hub for all Baron communications. Getting inside wouldn't be easy. It was guarded day and night by elite enforcers armed with energy weapons capable of vaporizing intruders instantly. But Corbin had an idea. "I used to smuggle contraband onto planets like this," he explained as they crouched behind a pile of crates near the perimeter fence. "Guards get complacent when nothing exciting happens. All we need is a distraction big enough to draw them away." "And what exactly does big enough mean?" Kale asked skeptically. "Oh, you'll see," Corbin said with a mischievous grin. Before anyone could object, he disappeared into the shadows, leaving the others to wonder if he'd completely lost his mind. Moments later, chaos erupted. Explosions, small but deafening, rocked the far side of the compound, sending plumes of smoke spiraling into the sky. Alarms blared, and guards scrambled toward the source of the disturbance, abandoning their posts around the Grand Nexus. Corbin reappeared moments later, brushing soot off his jacket. "Told you I'd handle it," he said smugly. With the guards distracted, the team moved quickly. The rogue AI drone hacked into the security system, disabling cameras and unlocking doors as they navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the Nexus. Inside, they found rows upon rows of glowing consoles, pulsating with streams of data that controlled everything from supply chains to propaganda broadcasts. "This is it," Ayra murmured, awestruck by the scale of the operation. "If we take this down, it'll cripple their entire network." "Then let's get to work," Corbin replied, pulling out a small device he'd rigged together earlier. As he connected it to the mainframe, the drone hovered close, guiding him through the process step by step. But their success came at a cost. Halfway through the upload, alarms began wailing again, this time closer than before. Reinforcements were on their way. "Hurry up," Kale hissed, peering anxiously around the corner as footsteps echoed down the hallway. "I'm going as fast as I can." Corbin shot back, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Finally, the device emitted a soft beep, signaling completion. "Done. Let's move." They bolted out of the room just as a squad of enforcers rounded the corner, plasma rifles raised. Shots zipped past them, narrowly missing their heads as they sprinted toward the exit. Outside, the chaos caused by Corbin's earlier diversion was dying down, replaced by organized patrols sweeping the area. "We're not gonna make it," Liren cried, panic rising in her voice. "Yes, we are," Ayra said firmly, grabbing her hand. She spotted an open maintenance hatch leading underground and pointed. In there. One by one, they slipped into the tunnel, sealing the hatch behind them just as the enforcers reached the spot. Darkness enveloped them, broken only by the faint glow of the drone's light. For several tense minutes, they crawled through the narrow passageways, listening for any signs of pursuit. When they finally emerged on the outskirts of the city, exhaustion hit them like a tidal wave. Collapsing onto the grass, they stared up at the stars, breathing heavily. "We did it," Ayra whispered, disbelief mingling with triumph. "We actually did it." "Don't celebrate too soon," Corbin cautioned, though a grin tugged at the corners of his mouth. "This is just the beginning. The Barons won't let this slide. They'll come after us harder than ever now." As if on cue, the ground beneath them trembled slightly, followed by the distant roar of engines. Looking up, they saw a fleet of Baron ships descending toward the city, their hulls glinting menacingly under the moonlight. "What now?" Liren asked, her voice barely audible over the growing rumble. "Now," Ayra said, rising to her feet with newfound resolve, "we rally the people. The Barons may have strength, but we have numbers, and hope." Word of the attack on the Grand Nexus spread rapidly, thanks in part to the rogue AI drone, which had uploaded evidence of the Barons' corruption onto public channels. Videos of lavish banquets held during times of famine, secret agreements with off-world mercenaries, and brutal crackdowns on dissenters flooded screens across Zentrix. For the first time, the oppressed masses saw their rulers for what they truly were, tyrants cloaked in false superiority. Protests erupted in cities and villages alike, fueled by anger and desperation. The Barons responded with characteristic brutality, deploying shock troops to quell the unrest. But the more they tried to suppress the rebellion, the fiercer it became. Amidst the chaos, Ayra and her companions became symbols of resistance. Traveling from settlement to settlement, they inspired ordinary citizens to rise up and reclaim their freedom. Along the way, they encountered unexpected allies. Even former Baron guards disillusioned by the regime's cruelty joined their cause. Yet, amidst the victories, questions lingered. Where was Thorne? Had he survived the Baron's wrath? And what role would he play in the unfolding revolution? As the battle for Zentrix raged on, Ayra found herself grappling with doubts and fears she hadn't anticipated. Could they really overthrow the Barons, or were they merely delaying the inevitable? And perhaps most importantly, at what cost would their freedom come? Only time would tell. The rebellion against the Barons grew stronger with each passing day, but so did the stakes. The once oppressed Pletheians, emboldened by Ayra and Corbin's audacious acts of defiance, began organizing themselves into resistance cells scattered across Zentrix. These groups coordinated through encrypted channels provided by the rogue AI drone, which had taken on the role of a digital general in their fight for freedom. Each cell operated independently, striking at Baron supply lines, sabotaging patrols, and spreading propaganda that exposed the regime's hypocrisy. Ayra found herself thrust into the role of a reluctant leader, her name whispered with reverence among the oppressed masses. She wasn't comfortable with the title, she never sought glory or power, but she couldn't deny the weight of responsibility that came with it. Every decision she made could mean life or death for those who followed her. And while Corbin tried to lighten the mood with his trademark humor, even he couldn't mask the gravity of their situation. One evening, as they camped in the ruins of an ancient Pletheian temple hidden deep within a forest, Ayra sat alone under the twin moons, staring at the stars. Her mind kept drifting back to Thorne. Was he alive? Captured? Dead? The uncertainty gnawed at her like a persistent ache. Corbin approached quietly, plopping down beside her with a sigh. "You're thinking about him again, aren't you?" he asked softly, handing her a steaming cup of herbal tea brewed from local plants. She nodded, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "How can I not? He was there when all this started. He believed in me before anyone else did." Corbin hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Look, I know how much he means to you. But right now, we need you here, with us. We're building something bigger than ourselves, Ayra. Something worth fighting for." His words struck a chord, though they didn't fully ease the pain in her chest. She forced a small smile. "You always know what to say, don't you?" He shrugged, leaning back on his elbows. "Not really. Just good at pretending I do." They sat in companionable silence for a while, listening to the distant hum of insects and the rustle of leaves in the wind. Then, out of nowhere, Liren burst into the clearing, her wings fluttering wildly. Her face was flushed with excitement, or fear. Ayra! Corbin! She gasped, clutching her side. We've got trouble. Back at the makeshift command center inside the temple, Kale explained what had happened. One of their informants, a former Baron technician sympathetic to their cause, had been captured during a covert mission. Before being apprehended, he managed to transmit critical intel. The Barons were planning a massive assault on the largest Plethian settlement, a thriving underground community known as Haven. They're calling it Operation Cleansing, Kale said grimly. They intend to wipe out every last resident unless we surrender immediately. Haven was more than just a settlement. It was a symbol of hope for the Plethians. Thousands of refugees had flocked there after fleeing persecution, finding safety and solidarity among its tunnels and chambers carved into the mountainside. If the Barons destroyed it, the morale of the rebellion would crumble. We can't let that happen, Ayra declared firmly, standing up. We have to protect them. But how? Liren asked, wringing her hands nervously. The Barons will send their entire fleet. We don't stand a chance. Corbin scratched his chin thoughtfully. What if we don't try to stop them directly? What if we use their arrogance against them? Everyone turned to look at him, intrigued. He stood up, pacing as he laid out his plan. The Barons think they're invincible, right? So let's make them believe they've won. We lure their forces to Haven, but instead of defending it outright, we set traps, ambush points, decoys, anything to slow them down. Meanwhile, we evacuate as many people as possible through secret escape routes. And what happens when they realize they're walking into a trap? Kale challenged. By then, it'll be too late, Corbin replied with a sly grin. We'll hit them where it hurts most, their ships. Without transportation, they'll be stranded on the surface with no way to retreat. It was risky, reckless even, but it was also their best shot. After hours of debate and refinement, the group agreed to proceed with the plan. They split up, each taking on specific tasks to prepare for the impending battle. Ayra led the evacuation efforts, ensuring that women, children, and the elderly were moved safely to remote hideouts. Corbin worked with the rogue AI drone to map out potential ambush sites and coordinate attacks. Meanwhile, Kale and Liren rallied volunteers willing to stay behind and fight. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, the first signs of the Baron fleet appeared on the horizon. Dozens of sleek warships descended toward Haven, their engines roaring like angry beasts. From her vantage point atop a cliff overlooking the settlement, Ayra watched with a mixture of dread and determination. This was it, the moment everything hinged on. The initial bombardment was devastating. Explosions rocked the mountainside, sending plumes of smoke billowing into the air. But amid the chaos, the resistance held firm. Hidden turrets fired upon the advancing troops, forcing them to scatter. Decoy signals broadcast false locations for key targets, drawing Baron forces away from vulnerable areas. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. Meanwhile, Corbin led a daring strike team toward the Baron landing zone, aiming to disable their ships. Using stolen Baron tech enhanced by the rogue AI drone, they infiltrated the perimeter undetected. It wasn't easy. Guards patrolled relentlessly, and automated defenses scanned for intruders, but they pressed on, driven by sheer willpower. Inside the main hangar bay, Corbin planted explosive charges rigged to detonate remotely. As he worked, he couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of it all. Here he was, a scruffy human nobody, about to take down an entire fleet of alien warships. Life certainly had a funny way of working out. Just as he finished setting the final charge, alarms blared throughout the facility. Guards swarmed in from every direction, weapons drawn. Corbin cursed under his breath, realizing they'd been discovered. With no time to waste, he activated the charges and sprinted toward the exit, dodging plasma bolts and leaping over obstacles with surprising agility. Outside, the rest of the strike team covered his retreat, providing suppressing fire as he made his escape. When he reached a safe distance, he triggered the explosives. A deafening boom echoed across the valley as flames engulfed the hangar bay, reducing the barren fleet to smoldering wreckage. Back at Haven, the news of the destroyed fleet spread quickly, boosting morale among the defenders. Emboldened by the victory, they launched a counterattack, pushing the remaining barren forces back toward their original landing site. For the first time, the rebels tasted the sweet tang of triumph. But the celebration was short-lived. As the dust settled and the survivors regrouped, a chilling transmission crackled over the comms. It was Baron Calith, his voice dripping with venomous fury. "You think this changes anything?" he sneered. "This is merely a setback. You cannot defeat us. Not while I still draw breath." Ayra clenched her fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "Then come and face us yourself, coward," she shouted into the communicator. "Or are you too afraid to show your glowing face?" There was a long pause before Calith responded. "Very well. Meet me at the Obsidian Spire. Alone. If you refuse, I will burn every settlement on this planet to ashes." The line went dead, leaving an ominous silence in its wake. Ayra exchanged worried glances with Corbin and the others. The Obsidian Spire was a towering structure located in the heart of the Baron-controlled territory, a fortress surrounded by deadly traps and heavily guarded by elite enforcers. "Do you think it's a trap?" Lirin asked nervously. "Of course it's a trap," Corbin replied dryly. "But if we don't go, he'll follow through on his threat." Ayra squared her shoulders, her resolve hardening. "Then I'll go. Alone." "No way," Corbin protested immediately. "You're not doing this by yourself." "It's not your call," she snapped, her tone sharp but tinged with emotion. "This fight started because of me. I won't let anyone else die because of my choices." Before anyone could argue further, she turned and walked away, her wings shimmering faintly in the fading light. Behind her, the others exchanged uneasy looks, knowing there was no stopping her now. At the base of the Obsidian Spire, Ayra stood tall, her heart pounding but her spirit unyielding. Above her loomed the dark silhouette of the fortress, its jagged peaks cutting into the crimson sky like shards of broken glass. Somewhere inside waited Baron Calith, and whatever fate awaited her beyond those walls. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, ready to confront the monster who had ruled her world for far too long. Ayra ascended the steps of the Obsidian Spire, her footsteps echoing ominously in the cavernous silence. The air grew colder with each step, carrying an unsettling stillness that seemed to press down on her chest. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, but she pushed forward, driven by a resolve stronger than fear. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every Plethian who had suffered under the Baron's tyranny. It was about Thorne, whose fate remained unknown. And it was about proving, to herself and to the galaxy, that hope could triumph over despair. As she reached the massive obsidian doors, they swung open without a sound, revealing a dimly lit chamber within. Standing at its center was Baron Calith, his luminescent skin pulsing with an eerie violet hue. His eyes glowed like molten lava, fixed on Ayra with a mixture of disdain and fascination. Behind him loomed rows of armed enforcers, their weapons trained on her. "You're braver than I expected," Calith said, his voice smooth and cold as ice. "Or perhaps more foolish." Ayra met his gaze unflinchingly. "I'm here because I have nothing left to lose, and everything to gain." Calith chuckled darkly, stepping closer. "You think you can challenge me? A lowly Plethian against a Baron? You are but a speck in the grand design of our supremacy." "Supremacy built on lies and fear," Ayra shot back, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. "Your people aren't superior. They're cowards hiding behind power they don't deserve." The Baron's expression darkened, his glowing skin shifting to a deep red. "Enough!" he roared, raising a hand encased in shimmering energy. In an instant, the room erupted into chaos. Energy blasts streaked toward Ayra, forcing her to dive out of the way. She rolled across the floor, her wings flaring protectively around her as debris rained down from above. But Ayra wasn't alone. From the shadows emerged Corbin, followed closely by Kale, Lirin, and several members of the Resistance. They hadn't abandoned her after all. With a fierce battle cry, they charged into the fray, engaging the enforcers in a desperate fight for survival. Plasma bolts zipped through the air, lighting up the chamber like a stormy night. Ayra locked eyes with Corbin for a brief moment, gratitude surging through her before she refocused on Calith. "You brought friends," Calith sneered, summoning a swirling orb of energy in his palm. "How touching. But it won't save you." He hurled the orb toward Ayra, who barely managed to dodge as it exploded against the wall behind her, sending shards of obsidian flying. Summoning every ounce of courage, she lunged at him, her movements fueled by desperation. Their clash was chaotic, Calith's raw power pitted against Ayra's agility and determination. Sparks flew as their energies collided, illuminating the chamber in bursts of light. Meanwhile, the resistance fighters fought valiantly, holding their own against overwhelming odds. Corbin wielded a makeshift energy staff scavenged from earlier missions, parrying blows with surprising skill. Liren darted between enemies, using her speed and small size to disarm them, while Kale provided cover fire with a stolen plasma rifle. Despite being outnumbered, their unity gave them strength. Back in the center of the chamber, Ayra found herself cornered, her body battered and bruised. Calith loomed over her, his glowing form casting long shadows across the floor. "This ends now," he declared, raising his hand for the final blow. But before he could strike, a familiar voice echoed through the chamber. "Get away from her." Everyone froze. From the entrance strode Thorne, alive and defiant, wielding a sleek energy blade that hummed with deadly precision. His face was gaunt, his clothes tattered, but his eyes burned with purpose. He had escaped captivity and tracked them to the spire, arriving just in time to tip the scales. "Thorne!" Ayra gasped, tears welling in her eyes. Calith snarled, turning his attention to this new threat. "Another human? How predictable." Thorne didn't respond. Instead, he launched himself at Calith, their weapons clashing in a dazzling display of light and fury. The two combatants moved with incredible speed, trading blows that shook the very foundation of the spire. For every strike Calith landed, Thorne countered with equal ferocity, his blade slicing through the Baron's defenses. Seeing their leader falter, the remaining enforcers rallied to his aid. But the resistance fighters intercepted them, buying precious time for Thorne and Ayra. Finally, in a climactic moment, Thorne disarmed Calith, pinning him to the ground with the edge of his blade at the Baron's throat. "It's over," Thorne growled, his voice filled with quiet authority. "Surrender, or die." For a moment, Calith hesitated, his pride warring with self-preservation. Then, slowly, he raised his hands in defeat. "You may have won this battle," he spat bitterly, "but you cannot destroy what we've built." "That's where you're wrong," Ayra said, stepping forward. Her voice carried a newfound strength, resonating through the chamber. "What you built was hatred and oppression. We'll rebuild something better, something based on freedom and equality." In the days that followed, the rebellion claimed victory. With Calith captured and the Baron fleet decimated, the remaining barons surrendered, unable to maintain control without their resources or leadership. Across Zentrix, celebrations erupted as the oppressed rose up to reclaim their world. Together, humans and Plethians began forging a new society, one free from tyranny and division. Ayra stood alongside Corbin, Thorne, and the others atop a hill overlooking Haven, now restored and thriving once more. The twin moons bathed the landscape in silver light, casting a serene glow over the scene below. "We did it," Ayra whispered, her hand finding Thorne's. "Yeah," Corbin added with a grin, leaning back on his elbows. "And not a moment too soon. I was starting to miss my old life of petty crime and cheap thrills." Liren playfully swatted his arm. "Don't even joke about that. You're stuck with us now." Corbin laughed, ruffling her hair affectionately. "Wouldn't have it any other way." As they gazed out at the horizon, a sense of peace settled over them, a feeling none had known for far too long. Though challenges lay ahead, they faced them together, united by a shared vision of hope. And somewhere among the stars, the spirit of rebellion continued to shine brightly, reminding all who dared to dream that even in the darkest times, change was possible.